Alpha.
Hi guys, and welcome to the second segment with regards to automotive photography. In this segment, we're going to be talking about mixing artificial light and natural light, and also we're going to be talking about using only an artificial light, aka also known as light painting. Guys, one of the most crucial tools for shooting, whether it's natural light and artificial light, especially when it comes to artificial light, is using a tripod. The camera needs to be set up on a base where it doesn't move. Having a decent tripod will set up the camera, and the camera will be stationary in one position where you can then go sync your camera to your phone, take your light, move off site, go into the car and actually light paint the car or flash the car by not touching the camera. By not touching the camera or actually pushing the button, it eliminates all camera shake, and your images will be 10 times crisper and way more sharper than actually standing there and pushing the button. Artificial light mixed with natural light is probably one of the most used features when it comes to commercial photography. Basically what it does is, by filling in the shadows with an artificial light, you create a nice commercial image and look to the actual photo. By means of doing that, there's two sources that I prefer to use when it comes to flash. We have a B1 and a B10. The B1 is a 500 megawatt light. It's like a light cannon. Basically what it does is it will overpower the sun, and you can create vast amounts of creative looks and feels to your image. The actual B10 is a slightly less powered light with half the power that this one's got, but this will actually just fill in the shadows, and you can create a very similar but more natural look to your image. Guys, there's various different ways of light painting. My preferred way is either using a B10 or a B1, as it's got a beautiful LED built into it, which you can even change the temperature, whether you want to make it hot or cold. What I would do is set the camera up, whether it's in a dark location, whether it's basement or a field, set the car up where there's no ambient light reflecting on the car, then bring in a light source. Actually walking around the car, whether it's on a 5 or a 10-second shutter, painting in light in areas you want it. This also helps tremendously by eliminating all reflections from the ambient light or ambient sources. One of the most popular ways of light painting is using of a light stick. In this case, it's an ice light from Westcott. Basically what you do is you'll set up a camera, whether it's at f9 or f11, in a dark area, basement, park, rooftop, where the ambient light doesn't get picked up on the actual sensor. You then go get yourself an ice light like this, switch the ice light on, start the actual camera by clicking the shutter, walk across the area you want to paint with light, and actually switch it off. What happens in that process is the actual light from the light stick will paint light in a specific area. That area can then be duplicated all the way along the car, lighting the car up and not having any ambient light reflecting on the car. This is great when it comes to eliminating reflections, and also gives a totally different look and feel to your image. A great technique for creating what we call a hero shot. Guys, that is it when it comes to light sources. You can have any one of these or various other ones. I've seen guys light paint with torches, with cell phones. You can add attachments to these. You can go and put modifiers, as you'll see we'll use on the field. You can go and put all kinds of reflectors on these to make them brighter, to soften the light. Lighting is a massive field of creativity. You can actually create whatever you want with whatever modifier you have. There's many commercial photographers that will shoot through 5 by 5 meter scrims, 10 by 10 meter softboxes. It's entirely up to you. You use what you feel best with regards to what type of creative image you want to create. So let's go put these to test and show you what we come up with. Hi guys, in this segment tonight we are going to be shooting a McLaren 570 GT. We're basically going to be using all the ambient lights in this basement, but we're also going to introduce our own artificial light. The artificial light's literally just going to overpower the ambient light, and which in post we can then go and emphasize all the highlights and the shape of the car. Okay guys, the tools for tonight's shoot is a Sony a7R4, 61 megapixel, extremely good camera, 15 stops dynamic range, extremely good camera with regards to shooting in low light conditions. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be lighting it with a ProPhoto B10 and a 1x3 foot softbox. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to set up the camera, we're going to do a bracket exposure with regards to the car, and then we're going to turn it right down and we're going to be lighting it with the actual ProPhoto light, which will highlight all the shapes and the curves of the car. For this shot, we're going to be shooting it at an f-stop of f9. For our base shot in this instance, we need to have it as 1 second exposure to expose for everything. We will take a base shot image. What we do is we set the camera up so that it takes a 2-second delay before it takes the photo to take out all vibration with the push of the actual button. Our ISO will be ISO 100, and what we'll do then is take a base shot. From there on we will set up the camera so that it can remotely talk to my phone, and then I will be firing the camera with my cell phone. What we're going to be doing to remotely control our actual camera with our phone, we're going to use the Imaging Edge app from Sony. We're going to actually use the app, go into your camera, press control with smartphone, make sure it's on. We're going to make sure that it picks it up on the actual camera. When you go through the settings, it's very, very user-friendly. You're going to say start. Start will then remotely operate your camera. With that, it makes it very easy for you to fire your camera by actually just playing around with the shutter. And you can play around with shutter speed. You can actually increase the shutter speed to increase the exposure. You can play around with f-stop, ISO, all your settings you can actually just remotely control off here. With being able to do this, you can now take your light, go stand by the car, and you're not touching the camera in any way or form, causing any vibrations, and you can just fire away. A couple of things I just have to mention with regards to the Sony. It's got a phenomenal dynamic range of 15 stops. You do not need to bring in artificial lighting. You can actually get away with this. The reason for me bringing in artificial lighting is I want to try and cancel out the actual other ambient light reflections on the car. You can also do it with a polarized filter. That will help it to a certain degree. I like to overpower the ambient light with my own light, and in that way we can actually bring in a creative side. Also bear in mind, this is 100% a creative environment. You can have the angle of the car that you want to do. Personally, I like to turn the car at a 45-degree angle, showing the actual shape of the curves and the actual shape of the car, in my personal opinion, the best. Another few things we need to talk about is when we shoot in this way of form, we actually shoot in a manual focus. The reason for that being that we want to focus the car on the front light at this angle, and then make sure that focus stays there and it doesn't jump around between shots. Also, another thing we need to mention is just, as you can see, there's a lot of artificial and ambient light in here, so white balance plays a big role. I would actually pick a white balance, set the camera to a specific white balance, and then go and shoot the rest of the car and actually light the rest of the car up. If you don't do that, you're going to have little color variances between different shots. So I think it's very important that we make sure it's set to a manual focus and it doesn't jump around. And number two, make sure that you actually set your white balance and then get creative. Guys, this is 100% a creative environment. Do what you feel, what your eye pleases, and just have fun. So what we've done now is we've made sure that it's set to manual focus. We have now taken our base exposures. What we're going to do now is turn the shutter speed all the way up to 125 to kill all ambient light. And then what we'll do is bring in our own artificial light to highlight the certain panels of the car. What we're going to be doing now is I'm going to be taking the ProPhoto light, taking in consideration that the light is coming from that side and that side. So I'll be facing the actual car in line with the light, firing it directly onto the panel from both sides to highlight the actual panels of the car and emphasize the shape of the body. Now that we've connected the phone to the actual camera, we're going to be remotely firing the ProPhoto light at a 90-degree angle to the actual camera, which will then emphasize the body panels, also reflecting the light straight to the camera. So we're basically going to be starting off from like 1.5 meters behind the car, just so that we make sure we cover all bases. We put a 2-second delay on so that there's no shake on the actual camera. We move 1 meter forward, keeping in consideration like 1 meter or 1.5 meters from the car. Keep firing all the way down the car, emphasizing all the body panels from a steep angle, also considering where your natural light from the actual ambient light is coming from. Keeping that in consideration, we want to make sure that it looks natural and the car is not entirely lit, but lit from the angle from the actual source of light. Now we move to the front of the car, literally once again starting a meter or so in front of it. Moving back all along the edge of the car. We then move what I call the silhouette shot. So we're literally firing in towards the actual camera, firing straight at the camera, but along the edge of the car, just to create like a nice silhouette of light on the edge. This is also a great technique when you want to do a composition or create a studio type of shot, which we'll be covering later in another segment. Also known as like a room light for the vehicle. Now we can just review all our images as we shot it along the car, making sure that all the panels got lit properly. Also showing all the details in the car, make sure that there's no angle we missed, and make sure that we got the rim light and we got all the exposures we needed. So now what I like to normally do is at the end, after you've done all your exposures for the car, to actually switch the car's lights on. By doing that, it creates a little bit of an ambient light. It also showcases the lights. I also make sure that the rear lights are on. Another thing you can do is get somebody to sit in the car and actually press the brake pedal, which will then emphasize the red lights and shine off the back of the wall, and it just creates a nice little ambient. What you can also do is you can actually then come in with a smoke machine and actually smoke the area up, creating nice light beams through the car. So like I said, the creativity is entirely up to you. It's the story you want to tell with the actual vehicle. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to take all these images we shot, read them into either a Lightroom or a Capture One, process that into Photoshop, layer them all together, and I'll show you guys the process on how to light this beautiful car so that it actually features in this basement. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so what we've done is we've taken all the images we shot in the basement, read it into a Lightroom, and then processed it from Lightroom straight into Photoshop. And what we've got here is the actual base exposure and base layer, what we call a base shot of the actual car. It's slightly underexposed out and out for the reason so that we don't blow out any of the highlights. So we're literally just exposed for the highlights here. So if you don't want to go through the process of lighting the car with an external or artificial lighting, what you can do is you can actually go and add a exposure level and actually go and play around with the exposure, and you can up the exposure. But as you see, when you start upping the exposure, the light and the lights of the car starts blowing out and you start losing a lot of definition on the car. So this is the reason we actually go and light the individual panels on the car so that we don't have this happening. So what I've done is taken the base layer. First of all, I created a mask just to actually, so that we can actually outline the car. So we create this mask around the car, just cutting it out so that when we bring our lighting back onto the photo, we're actually only bringing it onto the car. So what we did then is we took all these layers, you can see here, these are all the individual layers, and we literally start bringing them in one by one. So as you can see, those are the highlights on the roof of the car. Those are on the actual door on the opposite side of the car, and then it starts coming in with the fenders, the front, the nose, the bonnet, and then all through the car, the back, all these individual panels that we lit individually. We literally start painting the light back into them, actually just masking out pieces that you want to use and bringing that back. After you've done that, we literally just put it all together, and that's your lighting right there. So there's the artificial lighting we used, from a base exposure to a lighted exposure or lighted base shot. We then go and we clean up. This is 100% up to your own discretion. I literally just cleaned up the water spills on the floor, There's a couple of reflections on the car that I didn't like, that I wanted to clean up, and I felt that I left some of them that are necessary, like the numbers from the bottom of the parking. Those are reflections that ties the car into the actual scene. So there's a couple of reflections that you want to keep, but take away the ones that actually deter you from actually seeing the car and the actual shape and form of the car. We then did a perspective correction, just in camera raw. I did a dodge and burn, dodging and burning once again, emphasizing the highlights and the shadows, just literally emphasizing the lines of the car. We then did, and we literally cleaned up. All I did is actually just extended the roof slightly, just to get it in the size that I wanted to actually have the image in. We then did a curves layer, just lighting and darkening certain areas on the actual image. We put a gradient for color. Once again, this is 100% up to your own discretion. If you want to get very creative, you can actually up this level and opacity quite high. Personally, for commercial use, I like to keep this low, as you can actually influence the paint, but you do want to have a bit of a tying together of all the colors on the image. And that is the actual final product, guys. So basically, from a base exposure to a lit image. So there you can see the magic of actually lighting the car individually and keeping the base at its own exposure, so that you can actually make the car pop. Then, to take it one step further, if you want to get rid of the actual surroundings and actually just have the car as what we call a stage shot, you can then go and actually literally alter the background. So what I did is I took the walls and the ceiling away. Because we lit the car individually, we can now kill all ambient light, and as soon as you kill all ambient light and create a stage shot, you get that type of effect. So there you literally go from the actual basement shot to a full-on stage commercial shot that is entirely up to your own discretion of what you want to use as a floor level. I just used the existing floor that was there, obviously cleaned it up. You can then now go and bring in all kinds of backgrounds, and you can place this car on various areas on different backgrounds, just to create a bit more of an artistic look and feel to it. And that just pops the car out of the picture and makes it what we call a hero shot. Alright guys, there we go. There's your original base shot all the way to a stage shot. Once again, just showing the magic of using external lighting and playing around with some creative ideas. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned for the next episode that's going to be fully with regards to only using artificial lighting and the various creative sides of creating a story in an image. Enjoy. Cheers.